If you're looking for a new to-do app and you're in the Apple ecosystem, you should absolutely be considering OmniFocus and Things. These are both stellar task managers. But which one is right for you? We're going to figure that out in this video, and the way we're going to do that is I'm going to tell you about the kind of experience that you're likely to have using one of the apps versus the other. Real quick on why you might want to listen to me on this. Well, I have been teaching courses on organizing your life with Things or organizing your life with OmniFocus for 6 years now, and quite a lot of people have enrolled in my courses over the years, okay? And I've also worked with the OmniFocus and Things teams a little bit. For example, the OmniFocus people, when they were creating OmniFocus version 4, I had a call with them. They asked for my input. I've also met the Omni Group CEO back when I had more hair. And I've written an article for the OmniFocus website, and for Things, I did a collaboration, a giveaway. That said, this is my unbiased opinion because I don't get paid to promote either of these apps. I don't get paid if you buy one of these apps or the other. So I can just tell you which one I think is going to be the best for you. Here's what Things looks like. Things is gorgeous. It won an Apple Design Award. It has a buttery smooth interface, and it's just generally super easy to use, okay? So, of course, like any good to-do app, it has an inbox. So does OmniFocus, right? But you'll often be working from the Today view, and this is what that looks like in Things. If you've got any calendar events for the day, they'll show up here. Now, this is read-only. It pulls in your calendar events, but you can't, if you schedule a task that's in Things for a certain time, you can't put that on your calendar, okay? So it's not a two-way sync. That's the same thing for OmniFocus. So if you like to time block your tasks, maybe neither of these apps is that great for you unless you want to manually time block. I don't really recommend time blocking specific tasks anyway. I recommend just doing a block of time for a certain type of task, but now we're getting into the weeds. Anyway, your day's events can show up at the top here in the Today view and Things. And it is nice to be able to see that. And then you can have a to-do list. And so I've got a bunch of to-dos here. In this case, we are pretending that I'm a real estate agent. That's my alter ego, Peter the real estate agent. That's what's going on right here, okay? So I created some fake tasks as if I'm a real estate agent. And in Things, what's nice is you can split things between what you're working on during the day and what you're working on this evening. So this evening right here, I really, really like that. Now you're going to see if tasks have deadlines that are coming up soon. The deadline will be listed here on the right, so it's really easy for you to see what's coming up when you need to do things. We can also assign tags to our tasks. So for example, I can click this right here and only see my tasks related to Toastmasters, which is a public speaking club I'm a member of. If I click that, it just filters today's list by only the Toastmasters stuff. Or I can filter it on only my work to-dos and hide all my personal ones. So that's pretty neat. Okay, so those are things we can do. And by the way, I can just go into the Things settings and go over to General right here and click Group To-Dos by project or area, and then I'll group to-dos by high-level area of responsibility in my life, which we'll talk about in a minute, okay? But I like to keep this unchecked most of the time so I can drag tasks around, in the order that I'd like to work through them. So we've got this Today view right here. Then next up in Things, we've got the Upcoming view, and that's just showing me the upcoming days. What are some tasks that I've scheduled ahead of time for certain days, and what are my calendar events on future days as well, okay? And again, we can filter this by only work stuff or only Toastmasters or whatever. My demo database is a little bit empty today. We've then got the Anytime view, which I absolutely love. And the Anytime view is where you can plan your day every morning. So every morning, you can look at this and say, these are the things that might make sense for me to work on. Maybe I want to work on this today, and then you can use a keyboard shortcut like Command-T, and you see it adds the star, and now that's being added to my list for today, you see, and then I can drag it around in what order I might want to work through it, okay? I'm going to undo that, but that's how that works. That's very easy, and the Anytime view is great for that, and you can just scroll through it and it just shows all of your to-dos organized by area and project. In Things, there's also a special Someday bucket. Someday is great. What you can do in Things is assign certain tasks or entire projects to someday, like I might work on that someday, but I don't want to see it every morning when I'm planning my day in Anytime. So that's very handy as well. There's a logbook showing you the tasks that you've completed, and then we have this right here. Really important to know about Things. Things is quite opinionated. So Things is going to ask you to organize your tasks and projects and areas, especially in a certain way. basically there's top-level areas of your life, areas of responsibility. One might be admin, another one might be family and relationships, another one might be fun and travel or health, right? Those sorts of things. Now, what you can do is split up sort of, in this case, a split up work or business into multiple areas. So if I'm a real estate agent, I might have to-dos related to buying properties, if I'm helping someone find a home, or selling properties, right? If I'm helping someone sell their home, I might have marketing and lead generation work to do, and I might have just business operations. And so the way it works in Things is, this is a good example. We have this area for business operations at a high level, and then inside that area, I've got some to-dos. Maybe I got to renew a real estate license, order some business cards with a new headshot photo, but I've also got projects that live in areas. So if I've got something that's bigger than just a single to-do, I'm not going to complete it all at once, it should probably be a project. Here's an example. I had an AI come up with this because while I know a lot about things in OmniFocus, I'm actually not a real estate agent. But let's say for my fictitious real estate business, we are going to switch our CRM from HubSpot to a thing called FUB, Follow Up Boss, which is apparently a hip CRM for real estate agents, okay? But that's a project, and I can add some notes to that project right here, and the project, of course, itself has to-dos, and it's fun. You can see this little pie chart. If I check something off, more of the pie gets completed, so that's pretty fun. We can do it that way. And now what you'll also see if I just scroll down and head over to my, and by the way, here we can give entire projects deadlines as well. So for my Toastmasters Club, if I'm preparing to give a speech, my speech is on December 12th. Look at that. That's the deadline for the whole project, and you can see that right here as well, okay? But what I wanted to show you is if I just go over to today. Tomorrow, I've got a meeting of my Toastmasters Club, and I'm evaluating a speech that a different club member is giving, and I have a to-do to prepare to evaluate her speech. And I've got some subtasks really that are part of that, and things you can have checklists inside of tasks. I can also write some notes over here, right? Pay attention to her body language or something like that, right? Just add a note. And yeah, you can have checklists inside of tasks, okay? So that's the sort of organizational system. But what about scheduling? What about prioritizing? Well, in Things, the way that works is if I just go over, let's say, to the business operations thing, and I need to schedule an onboarding call with a new photographer. If I just double click this to open the to-dos card, there's two types of dates. There's when dates and there's deadlines. So in Things, I can just say, well, I need to do this latest by this Friday. What's going to happen if I do that, if I go over to upcoming, that task is going to show on Friday. But I can also take that same task and say, well, it's due on Friday, but I'd like to do it Wednesday if I can. That's the when date. And if I do that, it's actually going to first show on Wednesday, which is tomorrow, but still going to helpfully tell me there's 3 days left. So that's how scheduling works in Things, and it's really handy. And Things is, like I said, generally very easy to use. Is pretty much the same on iPhone and iPad, pretty much the same interface, works the same. It also has an extremely fast synchronization engine. So one of the things you're going to find if you're using Things, it's kind of a boutique app, kind of the people that make Things is a company called Cultured Code. They're only working on Things right now, and they have been for many years. And they're just relentlessly optimizing this app and making it as smooth as it can be. They do keep it up to date with the new features on your iPhone, iPad, and your Mac, right, with all kinds of widgets and stuff. And it always is really up to date with that. But they work so hard to just make the day-to-day experience extremely pleasant and reliable. For example, they spent well over a year recently improving the synchronization engine so that the synchronization of your tasks in Things between your iPhone, your iPad, and your Mac is just insanely fast and reliable, much more so than with any other app that I've ever used. And that's great. That makes for an enormously great experience day to day, but it does mean that they didn't have that time to add lots of new bells and whistles and tons of new features. And that's something that is important to keep in mind. But this is the basics of Things. You're just going to have an extremely smooth experience, but you have to be willing to organize your tasks in this way and your projects in this way that they do for you. There's no custom views or anything, right? There's the built-in views. There's some hidden ones as well. One thing I like to do is if I do Command F, I can search for the deadlines view right here. Wow, here's a hidden view that doesn't show up here that only shows my deadlines. And by the way, if you want to learn about this, I have a free cheat sheet for Things. I also have one for OmniFocus. Those are linked in the video description. Of course, the fastest way to master these apps and get yourself organized is to enroll in my Things course or in my OmniFocus course. Now, that's most of what there is to know about Things. Let's jump over to OmniFocus, and I'll highlight the differences. Here's OmniFocus. Now, what's the first thing that I notice? The interface has got a little bit more going on. It's not as polished, I would say. It's more of a database feel. It's kind of what you get with OmniFocus. It's a very detailed database where you can keep track of all of your to-dos and projects, and you can really slice and dice the data in there exactly how you want to, see exactly what you want to see. Okay, but the main view in OmniFocus is this one. It's the forecast. That's the equivalent of Things' today view. And what we're seeing right here is there's this little calendar on the left over here. If I just sort of click in the empty space, you'll see that the forecast perspective just shows you all the days that you've got something going on, right? So today, Wednesday, Saturday, but I can also just click on today and then I'll only see today, or click on tomorrow and only see tomorrow. Now, OmniFocus is going to pull in our events, read from our calendar in the same way that Things does that, okay? So that works. But what you can see right here is actually in OmniFocus, I can actually drag tasks around calendar events. So I can say, well, when I'm starting my day, actually, I want to plan an open house series and respond to Zillow inquiries. And ideally, I would do that before my Q4 strategy meeting. And then later in the day, I'll do these things. Okay, so in OmniFocus, you have that flexibility. And you have tons more flexibility. Let me just show you another example. I can't show you all of the things that you can do in Omni. It's too many. That's why I have the course. But one thing, for example, you can do in OmniFocus is you can change the structure of the forecast view from so-called flexible to organized. And when I do that, it looks like this. Now what I'm seeing is I'm seeing a separate chunk for my calendar events, a separate chunk for tasks that are on my list for today that are also due today, as opposed to have an intention of working on them today, right? They're planned for today. And then tasks that are planned for today but are not actually due today. Personally, I prefer sticking with flexible, but you have that option. And again, you just have so many options. In OmniFocus, what you can do is I can go into View and show exactly which fields to display, which properties of tasks to display. For example, do I want to display the date that I'm planning to do them, or the defer date, the due date? I'm going to tell you what those are in a minute. The repetition schedule, if there's any, or do I want to hide those things? Do I want to show full project path or just part of the project path? There's so much you can customize. So if you love this kind of customization, OmniFocus is probably for you, okay? So anyway, what else have we got going on in OmniFocus other than this forecast view right here? Well, we've got these custom views on the left over here, which in OmniFocus are called custom perspectives and built-in perspectives, but a view is called a perspective. There's an inbox in the same way that we had it in Things, so I can add the same water the plants tasks right here, right? And by the way, both OmniFocus and Things have a really good quick capture system on the Mac. I'm showing this on the Mac because that's where you're probably going to be spending most of your time using OmniFocus or Things. And even if OmniFocus is not the app I'm working in, I can use the quick entry feature, Control Option Space. You can change that keyboard shortcut if you want, right? And I can write something down that I need to do here, like order a new pair of Nike Air Maxes. Is that how you would say pluralize maxes? Maybe, probably. Okay, and I can go ahead and assign that to a home project, for example, right? And I can plan that for tomorrow if I want. That's my experience of quickly capturing something in OmniFocus. In Things, there's this one. Order a new pair of Nike Air Maxes. And in Things, I can use the keyboard shortcut Command-Shift-M, assign that to home, and I can do Command-S to pick the date picker, and then type tomorrow, and I can do that. And it works the same way. Both of these apps are really good at capturing on mobile. Okay, so one of the things I like to do is, let's see if you can see here, I've got this plus button on my phone right there. And so the plus button lets me pull out my phone if I'm on the go or even sitting at my desk, tap it, and quickly write something down, and it will get captured to my inbox, in Things or OmniFocus. And then I know I'll remember it later and I'll process it later, but it's out of my mind and I don't have to worry about forgetting it. So they're both very good at that. They both have widgets for the Mac, for your iPhone, for your iPad as well. Although it is important to know that the OmniFocus interface on iPhone and iPad is a bit clunkier than the Things interface. So if you're going to be using these apps a lot on your mobile devices, that's a downside of OmniFocus. Anyway, what else have we got going on here in OmniFocus? Let's go over to the projects perspective, and I can show you how, I'm just going to make this a bit wider, how organizing your to-dos and projects in OmniFocus is different than it is in Things. In Things, we have the really opinionated structure of areas, projects, tasks, checklists, okay? It's like that. In OmniFocus, I can create top-level folders, like an admin folder, like a business folder, and that has subfolders, and like a family and relationships folder, a fun and travel folder, a health folder, and so on. And then what I can do inside a folder, like this one right here, fun and travel, I can have different kinds of lists. There's actually 3 different kinds of lists in OmniFocus, so already it's a lot more complicated. Nothing rocket science, and you'll learn all about it in my course, but you know, there's a bit more of a learning curve. You got to learn how to use OmniFocus, but what you get in return for it is a more detailed way of tracking everything. So in OmniFocus, a folder can have a single action list. It's kind of the equivalent of in Things, just putting it to do directly in the area. You know, individual travel tasks. Like for me, take my scuba gear in for inspection and maintenance. Okay, I like to go scuba diving. That's one of the things there. But you can also have projects. And so projects, in the same way that you have them in Things, exist in OmniFocus. And it looks like this, right? We've got tasks inside the project. But in OmniFocus, a project can be parallel, which means I can work through these tasks in more than one order, or they can be sequential. And that could be a way of saying, I need to work through these tasks one at a time. Now, why might that be interesting? Well, here's again that example of switching the CRM for my little real estate agency from HubSpot to FUB. Maybe if I'm doing that, first what I need to do is export the contacts from HubSpot and then import them into FUB before I can go ahead and update automations inside the new system, right? It doesn't make sense to set up the new automations if I've got no contacts to test it with, you know. So I've got to do things in this order. That's why I set this entire project as a sequential project in OmniFocus. And then what I can do, or what OmniFocus will do, is it will gray out everything except for the first task. And so this task is available, this task is not. That's interesting because in OmniFocus, you can create custom perspectives that will only show you available tasks and hide the ones that are not available. And that's something in OmniFocus that is a theme. It can show you exactly what you want to see with really detailed filtering. Whereas in Things, it's just going to show you everything. In Things, I showed you the anytime view, which is for planning your mornings, right? Well, in OmniFocus, what I highly recommend is that you create a perspective called the available perspective that shows you, it looks maybe like it's similar to the project's perspective. See this versus this, but actually the available perspective doesn't show some things because it only shows you tasks that are available for you to work on right now, not things that are on hold or that you've deferred for the future or that are being blocked by some other tasks you've got to do first. So in OmniFocus, this is the equivalent of Things as anytime perspective for planning your day, but you're going to see a smaller set of tasks in here because it's smarter about hiding things that are not relevant. Of course, it being smarter about that means you need to spend more time setting it up, and there's a steeper learning curve, and whether you need that or not, you know, that's up to you. Do you want something that's more opinionated and easier to get started with and gets out of the way, or something that you can really customize, but then you've got to be careful not to spend too much time customizing at the expense of doing. And by the way, I've got a free cheat sheet, right, for these apps, and my OmniFocus cheat sheet, which is linked in the video description, will teach you how to set up this available perspective, right? Everyone using OmniFocus should be using the available perspective because you want to be in here every morning to plan your day. And what I've done is I've filtered some things out. So, for example, in OmniFocus, another way that I can hide things that are not relevant, maybe here's a project to streamline the document signing workflow for my business. I've put that entire project on hold over here. This sidebar, by the way, is the inspector. In OmniFocus, you're often going to work with the inspector. I've put the entire project on hold. That's why it's grayed out, and that's why it shows here under operations in the project's perspective. But when I go to the available perspective, I look under operations, it's not there because it's not available because I put it on hold. Another great way in OmniFocus to show you only what's relevant is the built-in focus feature, okay? What I can do is here in the project's perspective, I can highlight my business folder with all of my business tasks and projects and then click focus. Then OmniFocus will hide everything else. This works throughout OmniFocus. So also when I go to the forecast perspective, now I only see my business to-dos and not my personal ones. I can even link this with my max focus mode so that here, if I switch to the work focus mode, then automatically OmniFocus will hide my personal tasks. So that's a pretty cool integration there as well that's not available in Things. Now, OmniFocus generally just has so much more detail. For example, here's actually an important thing. One thing I need to do today is I need to look at a particular form because I'm evaluating someone's speech soon for my Toastmasters Club. And I need to look at a particular form that's in a PDF. In OmniFocus, I can attach the PDF to the task, but in Things, you can't do that. In Things, like in OmniFocus, you can add a note to a particular task, right? So ask her about something. You can add text, but in OmniFocus, you can also add, if I scroll down right here, entire attachments, which is not possible in Things. What about scheduling tasks? How does that work in OmniFocus? It's totally different. In OmniFocus, any particular task can have 3 different kinds of dates. A defer date, which is like, I'm not going to work on this, or I can't work on this until some time in the future. A planned date, which is, hey, I'm planning to work on this today or tomorrow or whatever. This one's actually fun. When I chatted with the OmniFocus team maybe 5 years ago, I suggested they added this feature, and it just came out this year. So it took them a while to add this feature, but I'm very glad they did because it's so helpful. Makes OmniFocus easier to use than it used to be. And then, of course, you can set the due date on a specific task. Whereas in Things, you pretty much only have what is called the when date is the equivalent of the plan date in OmniFocus, and the deadline in Things is the due date in OmniFocus. But in OmniFocus, you can also defer something. So yeah, maybe I'll have an example. I need to update the lockbox code for a certain apartment, but I won't be able to do that until next week. So I can just defer that until next week. It's grayed out. It's hidden from the other views, including the available view. Okay, so OmniFocus is very good at that. You can also, by the way, of course, repeat tasks in OmniFocus and in Things. So once you set a date, so for example, right here, you can click Add Repetition right here and make it every week, every day, 5 weeks after I complete it, and so on. And that works pretty well, both in OmniFocus and Things. A nice thing about OmniFocus is you can use floating or fixed time zones. So you can say, hey, this task is due 5 p.m. Amsterdam time, where I'm based, right? And then if I travel to New York, say, my tasks will still have the correct due date and time, or you can keep them floating and be like 5 p.m. just means 5 p.m. wherever I am. Another thing you can do in OmniFocus that you cannot do in Things is set location-based reminders. So one thing I can do is I can create a tag. OmniFocus has tags just like Things does, but for example, I can call it moms. And what I can do is I can set a location on this tag right here. So I can just punch in an address, right, or look up a contact in my Contacts app, and then I can assign this tag to a task. And then whenever I visit my mom, I'm at that location, OmniFocus will send me a push notification. Hey, here's the things you wanted to do at Mom's. So that can be very handy. And again, that's something that doesn't exist in Things. Now, a final thing I want to mention about OmniFocus that is really nice that Things doesn't have is the built-in review perspective. Okay, so it's very important, of course, when you're thinking about your task management system, it's easy to capture tasks into it. It's easy to keep them organized. And in Things, you've got the area and project system. And in OmniFocus, you've got folders, maybe subfolders, single action lists, parallel projects, sequential projects, all that stuff. But, after you've captured your tasks, you've organized them, you've decided this is what I'm going to do today, this needs doing by next Friday, you've prioritized and tracked your deadlines, you do need to periodically maintain your system. In fact, the number one productivity habit is the weekly review. When I work with people, if they're doing weekly reviews consistently, they're likely to have success for the long term with staying organized. And people who don't do weekly reviews, they just don't stay organized. And so this is a big strength of OmniFocus. It has a built-in reviewing feature. Of course, in Things, what I can do is I can go through all of my lists. I do this actually, right? Once a week. I look at this. I switch back and forth personally, by the way, between Things and OmniFocus, okay? Because I need to stay up to date on both of these apps, right? Because I teach people how to use these apps, and so hopefully you're finding this useful. So I switch back and forth personally. But I wouldn't recommend that you do that. I recommend you pick one or the other because it does get messy, but hey, it's my job. Anyway, when I'm using Things, when I'm doing my weekly review, and I do them on Saturdays, as you can see here, I just go through all of these and say, is this still relevant? Then I go through the next area and I click into a project and I say, is this still relevant? Maybe I've already done this. Just bring my lists up to date. But you kind of got to do it manually. Whereas in OmniFocus, one of the things that's pretty cool is every single project, right, or list, if I scroll down in the inspector, has a review frequency, and you can see when it was last reviewed. And then this perspective over here will just say these 2 projects are up for review today, right? And so it says last reviewed yesterday, got to review it again today. Normally I do it once a week, but this is a demo project. And so I can look over this and be like, yep, this all looks good. Oh, actually, I need to do this by Saturday, right? And maybe type Saturday. And then when I'm done with that, I can click here and I mark the project as reviewed. I look at this one, I mark it as reviewed. Now the review perspective doesn't have that badge. Boom, ready. Overall, I know I've told you about it a lot, but Things is smoother, and you'll want to go with it if you prioritize ease of use. If you are happy to go with an opinionated way to organize your to-dos into areas and projects, right? And if you just value speed, if you want to have the best experience on mobile, then Things is a good one. However, you've got to be able to live with not having location-based reminders, not being able to attach files, and not being able to create custom lists. On the other hand, if you choose OmniFocus, you're going to get an enormous amount of customization abilities. You're going to get location-based reminders, the ability to attach files to to-dos. You can set up custom perspectives. For example, I've got like a custom on-hold perspective, but you could create as well a perspective for deadlines within 14 days, those kinds of things, or work you completed last week. So you can really slice and dice your data. You can defer dates to the future. So many benefits, but you have to be willing to accept that the interface is just a bit more database-like, and on the Mac, that's not such a problem, but on iPhone and iPad, it's just a bit trickier to navigate. It totally works. I do it all the time, right? But you're not going to get the same smooth experience that you're going to get with Things. You're sometimes going to have to click or tap around a bit more to achieve what you want to achieve. And the most important thing with these apps is that you just know how to use them correctly, right? And again, I've got free cheat sheets for both of these apps, so check those out in the video description. But if you really want to get organized with one or the two of these apps, check out my courses, Organize Your Life with OmniFocus and Organize Your Life with Things. I put a lot of time in trying to make those the absolute best courses for you to get up to speed with these apps as quickly as possible to be your most organized and productive self. And I think you're going to love them. Check those out. Thanks for watching. Hope this worked. Feel free to ask questions. Have a great day. Ciao.